Dive in, Buckeye Nation, make sure you smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join the fastest growing Ohio State football community on YouTube. We break down schedules, recruiting, playoff paths, and everything scarlet and gray before anyone else. If you bleed Buckeye red, you're in the right place. Alright, let's talk about something every elite program fears, even when the schedule looks friendly. Trap games. Because in college football, championships don't always disappear against top 5 opponents. Sometimes they vanish on cold Saturdays, in loud stadiums, against teams you're supposed to beat. And in 2026, Ohio State has 3 games that could quietly derail a title run if Ryan Day's team loses focus. Expectations for Ohio State in 2026. The expectations around Ohio State in 2026 are massive, and honestly, they should be. This roster is stacked at the most important positions in modern football. You've got Julian Sayin, a quarterback who's already being talked about as one of the most talented passers in the country, and Jeremiah Smith, a wide receiver who looks like a future NFL star every time he touches the ball. This isn't a "hope they're good" season. This is a championship or bust year. That's why trap games matter more than ever. When you're Ohio State, you don't get anyone's best shot, you get everyone's Super Bowl. Let's break down the 3 games that could quietly test the Buckeyes' discipline, toughness, and focus. Trap game number 1. At Iowa, the Kinnick Nightmare. Let's start with the one that makes Buckeye fans uncomfortable every single time. Iowa City, Kinnick Stadium. If you've watched college football long enough, you already know what this place does to ranked teams. It doesn't matter how explosive your offenses or how many stars you've got, Iowa turns games into fistfights. This matchup comes early in the season, and that's exactly what makes it dangerous. Ohio State will almost certainly be favored. The talent gap will be obvious on paper. But Iowa doesn't care about recruiting rankings. They care about field position, physicality, and dragging you into the mud. This is the kind of game where drives are long and exhausting. Points are hard to come by. One mistake flips the entire game. If Ohio State comes in thinking they can just out-athlete Iowa, they're in trouble. This game requires patience, discipline, and a willingness to win ugly. Ryan Day has handled these situations well in recent years, but this is still the type of matchup where a championship contender can get humbled fast if focus slips for even a quarter. Why Iowa is always dangerous. Iowa doesn't beat elite teams by accident. They shorten games. They punish mistakes. They thrive when opponents get frustrated. And if Ohio State turns the ball over, misses assignments, or loses the line of scrimmage battle, suddenly the Buckeyes are in a dogfight they didn't plan for. This is a classic trap game, not because Iowa is flashy, but because they're relentless. Survive this one, and Ohio State builds momentum. Slip up, and the entire season narrative changes overnight. Trap game number 2. Maryland, the look-ahead danger. Now let's talk about a game that doesn't look scary, until you look at the calendar. Maryland at home. On paper, this should be comfortable. Ohio State has more talent, more depth, more experience. But the danger here has nothing to do with Maryland, and everything to do with what comes next. Because 1 week later, Ohio State heads to Bloomington to face the defending national champions. And that's where teams get caught. Maryland is improving. They're athletic. They can score quickly if you give them opportunities. And if Ohio State starts rotating players early, playing vanilla defense, or mentally checking out, Maryland can hang around longer than expected. This is a pure look-ahead game. The coaching staff has to sell urgency all week. Because all it takes is one sloppy half for doubt to creep in. Why this game matters more than it seems. Championship teams don't just win the big games, they dominate the ones they're supposed to. Maryland doesn't need to outplay Ohio State for 4 quarters. They just need Ohio State to underestimate them for 2. This is where leadership matters. Veterans matter. And Ryan Day's message matters. Handle business here, and Ohio State walks into the biggest matchup of the season confident and healthy. Fail to do so, and suddenly momentum shifts at the worst possible time. Trap game number 3. At Nebraska, the night before the storm. This one might be the sneakiest of them all. Late November. Road game. Hostile environment. And Michigan waiting the next week. Lincoln is not an easy place to play, especially if Nebraska gets a night kickoff. Memorial Stadium brings energy, noise, and physical football. Nebraska isn't flashy, but they're tough. They want to punch you in the mouth and test your patience. And Ohio State will be walking into this game with one thing on their mind: beat Michigan. That's exactly what makes Nebraska dangerous. Why Nebraska is a real test. This game will test Ohio State's maturity. Can they stay locked in when everything emotionally is pointing toward rivalry week? Can they handle crowd noise, physical play, and momentum swings without pressing? Nebraska will treat this game like their biggest stage of the season. They'll empty the playbook. They'll play aggressive. They'll try to turn it into chaos. Ohio State doesn't need style points here. They need composure. Win the trench battle. Protect the football. Get out healthy. Because one mistake in Lincoln could cost Ohio State everything they've been building toward. Ryan Day's track record with trap games. Here's the good news for Buckeye fans. Ryan Day has been excellent at avoiding catastrophic losses in games Ohio State should win. His teams are disciplined, prepared, and rarely overlook opponents. That doesn't mean danger disappears, but it does mean Ohio State enters 2026 with a coach who understands what's at stake. These games aren't about fear. They're about focus. The 2026 schedule is manageable, but it is not forgiving. Iowa tests toughness. Maryland tests discipline. Nebraska tests maturity. Win all three, and Ohio State stays on a championship path. Slip once, and the margin for error disappears. That's the reality of elite college football. Buckeye Nation, what do you think is the biggest trap game on the 2026 schedule? Iowa, Maryland, Nebraska, or someone we're not talking about enough? Drop your take in the comments. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and turn on notifications so you never miss Ohio State football coverage. We'll see you next time.